All right, everybody, welcome to ST Math. I just want to let everybody know ahead of time that this is being recorded and it will be saved somewhere. I don't know where I'm saving it yet, but I will let everybody know where that's going to be saved. So if you have any colleagues on your team or at your site that want to take a look at it, I'll be sending that out. I just want to first of all thank Brandy Technology and ST Math for helping us set this up. They worked really hard to work this on the back end. Very, very much appreciated. And the reason that we wanted to bring this to our district is that there's so much information out there and so many different programs out there that we wanted to offer you a high quality program that you could use with your kids as you navigate through the dismissal. And so today we have Karen Pankow and some other people actually from Mind. I wish I could introduce you, but they are from Mind Research Institute, and they'll be sharing some information about ST Math and how to get going at your site. And so you'll probably have some questions throughout. There will be time at the end for questions, and Karen will talk about that a little bit. But she said it's probably okay to jump in. We'll kind of see how many people we get. And as long as it doesn't get too crazy, then we'll kind of go from there. Just a quick heads up, because I think Karen's going to talk about the Clever integration. I see a lot of people from Warmer. You guys are going to log in a little bit differently. So if she talks about a trial, she's talking about Romer or Blandford. So just kind of keep that in mind as we go. Everybody else, you'll be logging in through Clever. So just a heads up on that. So without further ado, Karen, if you want to take over.
Great. Thank you, Ryan. Well, good afternoon, everyone. I am Karen Pankow, an Education Success Manager with Mind Research Institute. That is our company name. Our brand is ST Math, and we're super excited to have you on board with us over the next few weeks. I do have a colleague of mine, Brian Albert. She is going to be managing the chat during this presentation. I also have Vaughn Meisenberg. Sorry, Vaughn, I did not list you on my slide here. He is also with Mind Research Institute. So as Ryan mentioned, if you want to mention, or if you want to type in any questions in the chat, Bree can answer those throughout the next 30 minutes, because I do see we have, looks like about 36 people on. The content here is going to last maybe 30 minutes, so we're going to have a good chunk of time afterward to answer any questions. So without further ado, let's get started. So welcome again to ST Math. Before I even start talking about what ST Math is, I'd love to know what your prior knowledge is. So if you can go ahead and type in the chat anything you know about ST Math, that'll help our conversation. And it could be nothing, and that's fine. Gigi, yay, we know the penguin. We have some new teachers. Some from Roland. Yeah, keyboarding. That's quite a few years ago, so I love that you know about that. And music as well. Lots of problem solving. All right, so we definitely have a wide variety of knowledge here. So in order to show what ST Math is, I'd actually like to start with a question that is typically seen on a standardized test. Estimate the sum of 7/8 plus 12/13. And we have some answers there, A through D. This is a very traditional question with multiple choice. And I'd like you to guess what students typically would answer in this question. So go ahead and type in the chat a letter or the number that you see that kids might answer. Lots of C's, 21. So you are absolutely right. The majority of students who see this question when asked to estimate the sum of these fractions answer C or D. And the reason is because they don't have, or most don't have, a very strong conceptual knowledge of fractions. So when they get posed this question, they're trying to, go inside of their brain of knowledge of fractions and pull whatever they can out. So they might think, oh, I think I have to, obviously add some numbers. I see a plus sign. So I'm going to just add across the top. or add across the bottom. What we want to do with ST Math is show this type of question in a visual way. So imagine if your students were to see this question posed like this. What we're basically asking students to do here is estimating two fractions that are very similar. 7/8 and 12/13 are both very close to 1. So if they were to see these fraction pieces this way in orange, most of them would probably estimate that the answer is 2. They're basically answering 1 + 1 is 2. And that's how ST Math starts. ST stands for spatial temporal. And I'm going to show you a quick game here that shows how this works. So I'm going to go in here live, actually. This is called GG Cycle. It's one of my favorite games. This happens to be a 4th grade game teaching fractions. What students are looking here for is basically how to put these balloon baskets on what we probably can figure out right away is a number line. You'll notice there are no words. So instead of reading directions on what to do, students need to use trial and error. So they're going to notice what's on the screen. We see Gigi the penguin. Gigi seems to be on top of some sort of fraction pieces. Some people have noted this looks like a ruler. It is a number line. So I'm going to take a guess here as if I were a student, and I see 1/4 and 3/4 here under Gigi. So I'm going to take a guess that I need to put these balloons over 1, because as I'm moving my mouse around the screen, I can't click on anything else except for these balloons. So I'm going to click on 1, and when I do, I'm predicting that Gigi's going to move to the 1 and something might happen. I don't really know what, but something will in my mind. I'm kind of imagining this happening. And once I click, it's really important to watch what happens. So here I go. Oh man. Okay, well my guess wasn't right, but you'll notice that Gigi provided some animation that helps me form a different decision next time. So it looked like when Gigi moved forward, Gigi only moved forward 3/4, which was the blue fraction. And then Gigi actually moved back 1/4, which was the red. So let me try this again. 3/4 for the blue and maybe go back a little bit for the red 1/4. Hey, I did it. So you'll notice that Gigi provides not only immediate feedback, but informative feedback. This is why it's very important when your students are playing to watch what happens on the screen. If they don't watch the animation happen, they're not able to form a different conclusion as to how to proceed to the next puzzle. So now that I know how this puzzle kind of works, it looks like I'm going to add the blue. So I have 1 3/4, and then I'm going to subtract half. So let's see if this works. Okay, I'm onto something. You'll notice now the fraction pieces have changed. So as I progress more in this specific puzzle, I'm not just shown 1/4 fractions, I now see 1/3. So if I continue on my way, I'm gonna guess maybe around here. You'll notice the fraction pieces now change even further. So this looks maybe like 1/6. And what I don't have here to show you, but as the levels in this specific puzzle progress, soon these fraction pieces are no longer going to be visible, and instead students are going to start seeing the actual fraction 1/3 or 1/2 or 1/6. So this is an example of starting visually and moving into the symbolic, which is how ST Math works. And I have another example here to show you. This is taken from one of our games. And if you want to take a quick moment and type in the chat, what do you think you're trying to solve in this puzzle? So I see there's 5 creatures, looks like 3 birds. I know it's an ostrich, but your students might not. You'll notice some dotted lines. So how many total legs are there? You're exactly right. And if I were even a kindergarten student and I was still counting 1 to 1, I could simply go through here and count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And that's intentional. We want to make sure there's like a low entry point for all students. But as this puzzle progresses, you'll notice that these creatures are now into groups. Oops. And it's not into the middle of these puzzles that symbols are starting to be introduced. So after students have played a couple levels with just visuals, they do need to understand that we're adding groups. And as we progress even further, multiplication is introduced. And in the end, those visuals disappear and we see an equation like this. The intent here in ST Math is that way back here in the beginning of this puzzle, students have seen a variety of visuals with multiplication and grouping and adding, so that when they get to this part, they're visualizing this already as 3 groups of 2 and 2 groups of 4. This is typically where your textbooks begin. And if you're like me, when I was teaching, I taught 1st and 3rd grade, I would always have to go back and try to show visuals to my students when they would see this equation. Well, why not start visually and then move into the symbolic? And that's how ST Math works. Alrighty, so let me go. So you guys are definitely in good company. Prior to mid-March, when the coronavirus kind of hit our country hard, we had 1.2 million students on ST Math, 5,000 schools, and we were in about 2,400 homes. Those numbers in orange are actually the additions that we've had since the middle of March. So we've added 1 million students, 4,000 schools, and 24,000 homes. So we're super excited that you guys are in these groups as well. ST Math, when used consistently, has shown positive results. So this little graph here at the bottom is from a nationwide study that showed schools that used ST Math consistently outgrew similar schools in their states by 14 percentile points. So I know you guys are only with us for a few weeks, but I think you also will see the benefit from your students if used consistently through the end of this year. So I do want to spend just a quick minute to talk about our mission at Mind Research Institute to ensure that all students are mathematically equipped to solve the world's most challenging problems. There's a lot in there. And when I first read this, I had to read it a dozen more times. But there was one word that kind of struck me when I read it. And I'm wondering if it's the same word that struck you. So if there is a word that popped out right away, go ahead and type it in the chat. Equipped. Perhaps challenging jumped out at you, the world. A lot of you are saying equipped or challenging. The word that struck me was all. So here at Mind Research Institute, we want to make sure we're reaching all students. It shouldn't matter if someone never attended preschool or kindergarten. It shouldn't matter what language they speak. It shouldn't matter if they have a disability. We are reaching all students. And you'll notice it says to solve the world's most challenging problems. It does not say the world's most challenging math problems. We are creating problem solvers. And a lot of you already knew who Gigi was. Gigi is our penguin. Gigi is our ambassador who is going to help students along with these math puzzles as they play. What students are trying to do with every single puzzle is get Gigi across the screen. And there will be obstacles in Gigi's way along the way. But they are supposed to help Gigi cross and solve how to remove those obstacles from Gigi's path. So let's play a little bit. As students are going through every single puzzle, they're going through this learning cycle. We want them to notice what's on the screen, predict what happens, analyze what Gigi is showing them on the screen, and then also connect it to what's going to happen next, and also connect it to what they're actually learning in math. And you kind of saw this a little bit in the Gigi cycle basket puzzle, but we're going to play another one because I'd like to show you how the levels progress in a specific game. So let me go live here again. This is called Pie Monster, and this is from a second grade game. So I'm going to click in here. This is similar to what your students are going to see when they finally log into ST Math. They're going to click on this gray cone and then click on this gray cylinder to start playing their game. And this is a teacher view. So this is why I see all the levels in this specific game. But what I want to do right now is just quickly go through the levels to show you how each level builds upon the prior one. Because there are going to be students who get stuck once they reach a level 3 or a 4. And what they need to remember is what happened in the previous levels to help them keep solving. So I'm going to go into level 1 of Pie Monster. Just like I did in the Gigi cycle game, I just want to notice what's here. So I see Gigi up at the top. We now know Gigi needs to cross the screen and there could be an obstacle. So I notice that there's some blocks or boxes in Gigi's path. I see some circles. They're different colors. Oh, and when I hover my mouse over this green monster, it looks like I can click on certain circles. I see blue or I guess purple circles down here. I see what looks like a lever. So you'll notice that I'm trying to look at everything on the screen before I just start to guess. So, I still don't quite know what to do. So I'd love some help. What do you think I can select here to help Gigi cross the screen? Go ahead and type in the chat what number here you think I need to select. Some are saying 2, some are 4, another 2. See lots of 2s, a 5. So I'm going to go ahead and select 2. I'm guessing that maybe it's because there's 2 blue circles on the bottom. Someone said 6 to fill to 10. Oh, it looks like this is a 10 frame. So you guys are noticing a lot. Let me click on 2. Well, that didn't work, but you'll notice when I selected that number, Gigi couldn't cross. And you'll notice that on the right here, some pies started to blink. So it's giving me some sort of feedback as to what to select next. So if you didn't see that already, and this is kind of my last chance here, let me see. Let's try number 4, because some of you said that too. There's still 2 left over. Oh man, and my lives are gone. So I need to start over. So let's go back in again, and I probably won't get the same puzzle. All of our puzzles are randomized. So if a student comes in again, they might get a different puzzle. I just realized I'm in our professional development game, so I did get the, the same one. So now that you've seen this twice, let's try again. I see some of you are saying 6 now. Let's try that. We passed it. So it did take us a couple times, and that's okay. Your students are not going to solve every puzzle the first or second time. In fact, it might take them 8 or 9 or even, 10, 11 tries to solve a puzzle. But it looks like now I understand how this puzzle works is that I'm adding. So I'm going to add these pies on the bottom. They moved up to this, what looks like a conveyor belt, and the monster ate the pies. Well, let's go into the next level, and I want you to figure out what's different. I'm going to go into level 2. What's different on this screen? I can only select these on the bottom. I'll just give you a big clue. So now it looks like these circles or pies on the monster, I can't select anymore. I'm only selecting these pies on the bottom. When I go into level 3, and I'm not going to play through all of these levels for the sake of our time here. Now it's changed again. So now instead of the pies on the monster and the pies down here, I need to select pies on the conveyor belt. And then when you finally reach level 4, this is now, oops, sorry, this. Okay, well, it's okay. For the sake of our time, technical difficulties, I won't sign in, but in level 4, it's now going to be a combination of levels 1, 2, and 3. So students are going to have to be flexible thinkers and start selecting maybe pies on the monster, maybe pies on the conveyor belt, maybe pies underneath. So this is a great example of a CGI approach to learning. Kids are having to figure out the different parts of a subtraction or an addition sentence to solve the problem. All right. So you're probably wondering, this is all great, this is super fun, I want to play these games, but how do I do it? We have rostered, or I should say your district and Clever have rostered all of your students through STMath. So your students are going to sign in through Clever. I know we have a lot of, probably TK and K teachers on here. If you're not familiar with Clever, I would definitely recommend having your students sign in with badges. But you guys as your teachers know how your students should be familiar with logging in through Clever. So please make sure they do it this way. I think Ryan had already sent out instructions on how your parents can help their students log in, depending on what device they're using. You are also going to log in through Clever as a teacher. So once you do that, you're going to be brought to what we call our GG console. This is basically your dashboard of all your student information to see how they're progressing. You'll notice on the bottom right here is a link to STMath Central. That is our teacher resource site, and I know it's going to be super beneficial for you over the next couple weeks. If you have any questions or need a tutorial on something, you can certainly go there. We are also available to help, and we will talk about that towards the end. On the left is something called Test Drive. If you wanted to test out some objectives and games in your grade level or even other grade levels, Test Drive is where you're going to go. We're not going to go too deep into all the capabilities of STMath, but there are a lot of cool ways to use STMath as an instructional tool. And Test Drive is where you would go to do something like that. Once you click, oops, let me go back one slide. Maybe, there we go. This middle rectangle that's gray is called a class card. So if you ever hear that word, class card, this middle rectangle is what is being referred to. When you click anywhere on that class card, you are going to see a bunch of tabs on the top of your screen. The first of which is a roster. So because we're using Clever with STMath, you do not need to add students or delete students into your class. That is all done automatically. So if you receive a new student anytime between now and June, they are automatically going to be rostered into your class. There's nothing you need to do here. There's also a reports tab on the top, which we'll go into very briefly. A curriculum tab, which we'll also talk about, as well as alerts. You will, I know with distance learning right now, it's uncharted territory and we're figuring out, well, how are we going to help our students? That alerts page is going to prove to be beneficial. So let's go through here, kind of on a top overview here. So under the curriculum tab, you are going to see objectives listed. And you'll notice that each objective has a color next to them. So comparing numbers is red, numbers and counting to 100 is yellow. These colors are associated with a specific domain. So you'll notice all, the yellows are going to be, counting and cardinality. There's going to be a geometry domain that's going to be the same color. On the left, you'll notice these are assigned objectives. And there's also a tab underneath that says optional objectives. You can assign optional objectives to your class. Because it's already, mid-April, it will take some time for your students to get through the entire assigned objectives, but there are others available for those students who are progressing quickly. Oops, sorry. You can reorder these objectives into an order that you prefer. You would simply click on those three little gray bars and move the objective up and down. Again, because we are in mid-April, you may want to rearrange this depending on what your kids are learning. That could be a district question as well for Ryan. I'm putting you on the spot. But I would not change it multiple times. So once your curriculum is arranged in the order in which you prefer, I would leave it. And the reason is so that your students don't sign in every time to a completely new game. When you click on each of those objectives, it's going to give you a quick description of what that objective is. So for this one, comparing numbers, it is the counting and cardinality domain. That's why it's red. And in this objective, the games are going to be associated with comparing and ordering two numerals between 1 and 10 using visual models. There is also a link right here. You'll notice there's a test drive button. If you wanted to test out those games, you could certainly click here and play around with what your students are going to see. I won't spend a whole lot of time on this reports page. We could talk over an hour about all of our reports, but I did want to show very briefly a couple columns here. Once you have your kids start playing, this data will start populating. You'll notice the names of the students that are on the left, and you'll notice here in the middle, or also on the left, it says school sessions and home sessions. This basically tallies how many times your students have logged into STMath. You will not see a number other than 0 in the home sessions column, and that is due to Clever. So if you do happen to see a number that's not 0, your students are most likely logging in incorrectly. And we'll talk about how to exit as well. I do want to talk quickly about alerts. You'll notice there are some circles, or we call them bubbles, next to two names here, Mauve and Caleb. So it looks like there is an alert associated with those two students. And in order to see what those alerts are, you can click at the top on the Alerts tab, and it's going to give you some additional information. So it looks like some students have a high number of tries. So Ashlyn, Aiden, and Mauve, they're all on subitizing objective. I noticed that on the right. They've tried between 10 and 21 times to solve this puzzle. Now, typically in a normal classroom setting, you'd be able to pull these students next to you and work with them on a puzzle, ask them specific questions and on how to get them unstuck. We realize that right now, that is kind of hard to do. So we have some facilitating questions that are available to parents to help their children as well. And we have a ton of resources that we won't be going over each specific one today, but there are resources where students can help themselves get unstuck. Sometimes we've noticed that if kids simply are allowed to talk about the puzzle and what they're doing, they actually get themselves unstuck. But note, this is a resource for you. So if you're doing Zoom meetings with your kids, either whole class or individual, this would be a great page to take a look at prior to those meetings so that you can help your students with any puzzles or struggles that they're going through. I guess I got ahead of myself here. We do have a recommended weekly usage for kindergarten and first grade at 60 minutes per week. Second grade and up is 90 minutes per week. And I apologize, it's not on the slide. For TK, we recommend 30 minutes per week. This can be broken up however you see fit, but we do recommend having at least a 15 to 20 minute block of time for students to play the puzzles. If it's any less than that, they're not going through enough puzzles to really form their schema around a mathematical concept. So make sure they have at least a good 15-minute chunk when they're playing ST Math. This is extremely important. So I mentioned how to exit ST Math. This is a quick visual of what to do. There is something we call basically arrowing out. So you'll notice in each slide here, there's an arrow. I know it's kind of tiny here. There's an arrow that they need to back out of on every single screen until they get to this blue Today's Accomplishments screen at the very end. At the very end of those arrows, they're going to click on the red X to log them out correctly. And the reason that students need to do this is so that the data is going to show in your teacher account. Because you guys are using Clever, you also want to make sure that students are logging out of Clever and ST Math, especially if students are, if they have siblings in their household and they're sharing devices. We don't want students clicking into ST Math on their brother or sister's account in the wrong grade level. These are some of the questions that I was mentioning before with these, with facilitating. A lot of times we want to guide students. I shouldn't say a lot of times, all the time. We want to guide students on how to help them get unstuck if they are stuck on a puzzle. We don't want to tell them the answer, and that's really important for parents to know too. I'm a parent and a teacher. I really want to understand that. I really want to not be tempted to tell someone the answer. With ST Math, sorry, I apologize. My daughter wants to play too. Yes, honey. With ST Math, we do recommend having manipulatives. So I know at home, students probably don't have any Unifix cubes available, but they might have Legos. They might have jelly beans. They might have, even little pieces of paper that you can cut up. So there are manipulatives that students can use at home. We do have a website available for teachers. This is part of ST Math Central. So when you click on ST Math Central, there is a page here that really answers some quick questions like, how do I monitor this flash error that's coming up? Who is Gigi? How do I rearrange the content? What is this quiz that my students are having to answer questions for? And then we also have a parent resource page as well. So Ryan, I think I had sent you these websites already, but if not, I will. This is a stmath.com website that will help parents as well help their kids. Oh, whoops, that went live. Sorry about that. And our ST Math support team is also available for you. Please call them with any questions. Your parents are also available to call them as well. I am also free to answer questions, but our ST Math support team is available for immediate responses. So I'd recommend emailing or calling them if you need to. And with that, that's kind of the end of our content. So if you have any questions that have not been answered in the chat, please feel free to unmute yourself or still type in the chat and we can answer that way.
Hello, I have a question.
Here we go.
Hi. So I'm a teacher at Rorimer, and we've been using this for years. We're very familiar with it. What we don't know is how are the students going to access it from home? Do they do the ST Math at Home version, which is like homework? Or are they logging in with that ROR whatever code that we were given for Rorimer?
So it kind of depends on if your students have already started. So with Rorimer and Hurley and Blandford, some students have already started SD Math and they're going to continue how they've already started to play. You do need to assign homework in that sense. Is your specific class, have your students played SD Math at all?
While they've been at home, no.
Okay, so if you are part of the trial, then you will have to follow those trial instructions that were emailed to you.
Okay.
And the trial, like I said at the beginning, it's pretty different. The students are only going to have access to 8 to 9 objectives as opposed to the entire curriculum. And there's also a different website that they need to log into. There's also like different student numbers and passwords that you're going to have to send out. And I am hosting a webinar tomorrow about trials. If you want to join that, I mean, I can answer questions now too. But there's a webinar tomorrow at 2:30 that will really go deep into that process.
Okay, thank you, Karen. Ryan, I don't remember getting that email. Was that sent with this confirmation, or when did we get that email?
Sorry, is that someone, was that you, Raquel?
Yes, it's still me.
Yeah, so STMath, please jump in if I'm misunderstanding. I think we're still finalizing the Warmer trial. And so I don't think Warmer received any emails yet. So if you didn't receive one, that would be correct. I think we're still working on a couple of things. Is that right, Karen, as far as you
Yeah,
guys know?
sorry, maybe I misspoke.
Okay.
What we're doing is once the trial has begun, we're going to send an email to your admin, and your admin can create classes for all of the teachers, and then you can get started with your kids.
Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome. Let's see, I see some questions. I think Bree answered one. There are no placement tests for ST Math. They're going to be using the grade level content that they're rostered under. Is there a place to get Clever badges? Bree answered that one as well. But yes, you can access the badges in Clever. There are instructions. If you go to clever.com and search, print student badges, then there's pretty detailed instructions there.
Hi, I have a question.
Okay.
I was the one that was asking about the placement test. I teach special education. So if my students are not functioning at grade level, how do I go about setting specific skills for them?
Great question. There is a way to change grade levels for that specific situation.
Okay.
As long as your students are attached to you as the teacher, you can create a class and transfer a student into whatever grade level that you need.
Okay.
Let me see if I can show you. I won't actually do this, but you'll notice on the bottom of your screen when you log in, there's a called create class. So let's say all your students are rostered under 4th grade or 2nd grade. You can create a class under a different grade level and transfer kids into that new grade level, but you do need to create a class first.
I see. Okay.
And there are instructions on how to do that on ST Math Central, or please call our support line and they can walk you through it as well.
Okay. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Let's see, is there going to be a training for how to use Clever for those of us that have never used it? Ryan's checking with Brandy about Clever. In my experience with Clever, once students log in once, it's pretty simple to use, but I did teach 1st grade and I do recommend using those Clever badges if your students have access to a printer. So that they can scan their QR code to log in as opposed to typing in their credentials. Let me see if I missed any questions here. How long will teachers have to use ST Math? So right now we're offering this through the end of June. For free, at least for Roland. And we hope that next year we can talk about how to move forward still with ST Math. But right now it's through the end of June. Do the SS in our ST Math class have to be enrolled in our district? Students, I'm assuming you're saying. Yes, the students that are in your attendance system are going to be rostered in Clever. However, if you have other children that you'd like to have access to ST Math, we are offering free homeschool accounts right now as well. I can type in the website. If you go to stmath.com, oh, and I spelled that wrong. Coronavirus. I'm going to do it again wrong. There we go. You can sign up for a free homeschool account there. Now let's see, if students don't have a printer, will the number be included somewhere with the badges? So if they don't have access to a printer to print the badges out, you probably want to have them use their like regular sign-in credentials that we at ST Math wouldn't know what those are with Clever. It would be something that your district would have. And I'm going to keep my screen on our support number so you can take a screenshot or jot that down. We are open 5 a.m. to 7 p.m. Pacific time to answer your questions and help out. And again, please have your parents call as well. Sometimes that's easier because you end up being the middleman as a teacher and might not be able to answer all of our questions. And again, feel free to unmute yourself if you have a question. If not, this is kind of the end of our presentation from ST Math. Ryan, I don't know if you want everyone to hang on till 1 if there's something else that you needed to review, but I will hang on if there's other questions that come up.
I have one question.
Hi.
Hi. Is there a way, because I have TK and my kids have never used Clever and it seems very complicated for TK. So assuming we get the badges, is there a way to email the badge to the parents, or do we need to snail mail the badges to the parents? If they don't have a printer, what do we do?
You should be able to email them out. If my recollection is correct, when you download them, they download into a PDF.
Okay, thank you.
I believe.
We'll just have to figure it all out. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, Tammy, for joining us. And good luck to everyone. I did take a look and it looks like some of your schools have already started. So even if you as the teacher did not tell them about ST Math, they found it through Clever. You're welcome, Raquel. Ryan, do you have any questions for me specifically?
Yeah, you mentioned the if we didn't, so it sounds like it'd be a headache, but they don't have to log in through Clever. they could do their like ID or something. Could you speak to that a little bit?
They do need to log in through Clever.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah, so depending on the device that a student is using, there are different login instructions on what to do. So when they're on a laptop or a desktop, they're simply going to log in through Clever, click on the ST Math tile, and they should be logged in automatically. When using a tablet, it's a little different. So for instance, on an iPad, students will need to download the ST Math app, but then they need to close it before they log in through Clever. So it is a little trickier, but those instructions are listed in that home letter that we sent you. But that's typically where a lot of students and parents will get stuck. So that's important for them to know. Download the ST Math app, but they cannot access ST Math through it. They still need to go through Clever. Go over reports a little bit more. Sure. Let's go back. Is there a specific question that you have, Ms. Halls, it looks like from you? Currently use Prodigy very effectively, but wouldn't mind having this too. Great. Yeah, ST Math is a little different. It definitely starts visually, and you'll notice in our games, the graphics were very simple. Not to get too involved, but when we are problem solving, we're using our working memory, and we don't want to, fill up our working memory with a bunch of, noise on the screen. So that's why you'll notice a lot of our puzzles are very simple in their animation. So here is the progress report that we had shown earlier. Do you have a specific question about this specific screen, or was it the alerts tab?
Hi, can you hear me? Sorry.
Hi, I can.
Hi.
Yeah.
Okay, so sorry. I'm on my phone for the first time, so I'm like, I don't know how to do this.
That's okay.
I used this as a parent when my now middle schooler and high schoolers were little. So I understand the inner workings of it on the parent perspective. Then when I taught kinder 4 years ago, I used it, but I was new using it as a parent, as a teacher, and I just didn't use all the reports and stuff. And I've since come to use Prodigy at our school, and because we didn't pay for ST Math. And anyway, I just really love the reports that I get from Prodigy. And so going forward, I wouldn't mind switching over to ST Math, especially if our school ends up buying it. So I just kind of wanted to explore a little bit, but I can do that, I guess, on my own once I get in.
Well, I can go, let me see if I can see one with some good data. So these are all my demo classes. Let's see if I can click in here and show you at least some data. And these are obviously fake kids, so there's probably not a whole lot of data here, but we'll see. So in my screenshots, I only have this progress report open, but there are other reports available. If you click on this little arrow here, that'll show you usage. There's a student detail report and there's a standards report. You will not see a fluency report in your view. But if you click on usage, and again, I usually talk about reports for an hour, so I'll try to be brief. This will show you the average minutes spent on ST Math. This is a cumulative report. Your admin will be receiving weekly reports, and if they don't, have them contact me or our support team. But it'll give them and you an idea of how your kids are logging in and how many minutes they're spending on ST Math. There's also a student detail report that'll give you more information on this specific student. So for instance, you'll notice how many times they're logging in at school and at home. Again, you'll only have numbers in the school session column. You'll notice how far along they are in our syllabus progress. So the goal is 100%. I'm going to kind of skip over this objective performance right now, but over here, it'll tell you what objective they're currently working on. So this happens to be password training, but let's say they're on subitizing or working on the number line. By knowing what objective they're working on, you can then, differentiate your teaching, even during distance learning, to help support whatever objective it is they're currently working on. Again, this is the same information from that usage report that I had shown.
So can you push out specifically that you want them to work on, let's say, subitizing? Can you set it up so that when they go in, they're just working on that?
Not necessarily. So when you click on the curriculum in your grade level, all of these objectives are going to be in a default order. You can move them around. So if I drag this up and down, I can decide, you know what, I want patterns and number and shape to be number 3 in the list. But when your students log in for the first time, they're all going to be working on this first objective and then playing through the curriculum at their own pace.
So right now through distance learning, let's just say we were in a place to start our third trimester stuff for math. And if we're pushing out new teaching, can we rearrange those so that they'll see those things come up first? Let's say clocks. So if I wanted them to get a lesson from me and then go do their GG math and get clocks, I can rearrange it so that they'll get clocks right now. Does that make sense?
I understand your question. The answer is yes and no, depending on how quickly a student is moving through. So yeah, yes, you could. It could be a little complicated, and here's why. You would have to basically unassign, like by clicking on these little computer screens, and you'd go all the way down through the curriculum and make sure all of those are off, so that the only objective students could play is this first one called factors and multiples in this case. This would mean that if a student completed this objective, they're not going to be able to play any more objectives at all. So like they're going to get a screen when they log in and there's going to not be any more content.
But then I could shuffle and review. Let's say I put in clocks and then I put adding with 2-digit numbers and then I put graphing and then I put a review thing. I could technically set it up so that I could give them the next thing they did was a review and scaffold it a little bit. Yes, no?
You could, but the way, it depends on how quickly students are going through an objective. So let me give you an example. Let's say you have, I'll just call student A and B. So student A signs in and you have all of these objectives assigned based on the order that you want. They want to play SG Math for an hour and they go through objectives 1, 2, and maybe even 3 because they're a really quick, they love math, they're really good at it, and they just want to continue playing. Then you have student B, who maybe also played for an hour, but they only got halfway through factors and multiples. So the next time they log in, student A is going to be starting using place value, and student B is still going to be on factors and multiples, simply because of how they progress at their own pace.
Which that's okay for me, but if I can actually force their hand as to what they're doing when they're on it, that would be very effective and helpful for me. So that's cool. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Also, can I ask one more? Sorry.
Yes.
No,
You go ahead.
said something somewhere during the training that we would know if they logged in incorrectly, but I wrote it down as a question. I wasn't sure what you were saying. How would they log in incorrectly?
Great question. Let me go back to this progress report. You'll notice that the very last column says last session. If a student logged out correctly, then this date and time will be accurate. In some cases, like this is kind of old here, but let's go to this Frederick. It looks like Frederick last logged out on September 2nd of 2018. It could very well be that Frederick has been playing ST Math since then, but if he did not exit correctly, this date is not going to change and the data is not going to populate into your account.
Can you go in and log them out correctly?
Yes, you can, but if you have 30 students constantly not exiting correctly, it's going to be a lot of time for you to do that.
Oh, sure. I'm just thinking
yeah.
at school, when they're done playing Prodigy, they don't log out. They just leave it running so that it's easy for them to get back in without relogging in.
Okay.
I know their habit right now is to not log out of things. So while they're not under me and I'm able to see that they didn't train them, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I just want to be able to go in and unlog them or log them out so that when they go back in, I'm getting the data from home.
Yeah, you certainly can. So if you saw what I just did, I clicked on the name. We'll go into Ironman. There's two ways of doing this. If you click on the student's name, there's going to be an icon here that says login as student. It is going to log you out of your account. So if you're going to do this for every student, you're going to have to log back into your account, log in for the student, and kind of go in that pattern until you log in for all your kids. Or if you are in this report, you'll notice I'm in the student detail report up here. And there's a little key at the top right that will also log in for the student. You'll also need to log out for the student correctly. So I'd recommend just reminding your students, the first week or two of playing ST Math, that they do need to exit correctly just to save yourself some time in the future. But it is an option.
That's really helpful. Thanks so much.
You're welcome. Any other questions? I'm sure you'll get questions once you dive in. So again, please take a screenshot of our STMath support contact information. We're happy to help you, and also happy to help your parents and students if they need to call us directly.